Hello, everyone, and welcome back to French with Scott. Today we're going to talk about articles, which sounds simple, but in French they are actually much more complicated than in English or Spanish. So you can't just assume that they work exactly the same way. So just a review of the articles we have. We have masculine and feminine. We have le and la, and the plural of both of these is les. And using the what's called the principle of the liaison, when you have les, which is followed by a vowel sound, you pronounce the S. So for example, les amis. Les amis. And actually, even if you do a pause, the sound actually goes at the front of the second word. So les amis. Strange, but it is actually like that. And then so these are the definite articles. And you also have the indefinite articles. The indefinite articles, un or une. Une. In the south, you might hear une. In the north, you get less of this, the resonance of the E on the end. It's une, more clipped. Une versus une. It's literally, it's closer geographically and linguistically to Spanish. There used to be a linguistic continuum where it was une in the north, una in the south, and then una in Spanish. It's in the middle of transitioning more towards the northern way. Anyway, and then the plural of the indefinite is des. So indefinite number, just some of something. So des amis, some friends. Des amis, des amis. You also have the combinations of the articles with other prepositions. So for example, a, when you combine with a, these form contractions. So you get o. With the feminine, it's a la. It doesn't contract. And you also have with de. With de, you have du. Or de, la. So whenever you say o or du, those are just contractions of these. So in de is actually a contraction of de lait. It's the contraction of de lait. And you also have when you have a, you also have the plural, again for masculine and feminine, is o. So I mentioned that these do not work the same way they do in Spanish and English. Let me get something to erase real quick. Should have had that on hand, but I am not the most forward-thinking, well-prepared person. Not super messy, sorry about that. But the thing is, the reason I wanted to talk about the difficulty with the articles is that unlike in English, where you can sort of get away with not using articles, you can just say like I want eggs, or in Spanish, quiero huevos. You cannot do that in French, and the article is really an important part of the word. You can't really separate the article from the word because it carries necessary grammatical information. So, for example, to say like, I want eggs, you're ordering at a restaurant, we're going to be impolite and just say, je veux, just for simplicity's sake. You can't say, je veux, You can't say je veux. You have to say je veux Des œufs. Des œufs. Je veux des œufs. Same for bread. You can't say je veux pain. You have to say du pain. You have to say some bread. When you're ordering, anytime you're ordering an indefinite amount of things, you have to use de or du, or de la. If you want a piece of the tart or the cake, you can say de la tarte. Je veux de la tarte, de la tarte. Or one you may have heard. Eau. The word for water is eau. Eau. You have to say l'eau or de l'eau. Je veux de l'eau. So yeah, you have to. The article is obligatory to really understand. Not just the gender of the word, but also the quantity. The quantity is the difference between du and de. The quantity is encoded in the article and not in the word itself. I read a theory once that had French not been a written language, if it had not been written down, if you just let the clock run out 1,000 years and just let the language evolve as it had been going from Latin, you might have gotten to a point where words were sort of conjugated and articulated like in the way that Latin does it on the endings, but actually on the beginnings of the word. There's other like pieces of evidence that one can cite for this theory, but the idea is that since on many words you do not pronounce the last letter, the necessary grammatical information, like whether this is plural or singular, is encoded in the article that goes at the beginning. So you have to put that on the beginning. I made a few mistakes when I was beginning to, or mistakes, interesting discoveries. Like at one point I told someone that if I see a dog on the street, you know, I might play like speaking in French to the dog and say coucou chien, and I was corrected that you can't say coucou chien, you have to say coucou le chien. Like even when you're talking to a dog, it's just an integral part of the word. Like it's weird to imagine cutting it off from the word. Like you can't say coucou, like you can't say or like salut chien dog. You have to say le chien, salut le chien, or monsieur le chien, Mr. Dog, monsieur le chien. But yeah, articles almost obligatory, almost everywhere. Another example of where I really messed up with not using articles at the beginning. The word for turkey the animal in French is dinde. La dinde. La dinde. And you might be able to tell that this is actually originates from, you know, in English we think of a turkey coming from Turkey, you know, hence it's called turkey. In French and in many other languages, it's considered to be an Indian bird from the Indies. So it came from something that was dinde, or like a poulet dinde, a chicken of India, and now it's dinde. But when I went to France the first time, I brought some turkey jerky from the United States as a gesture of interesting cultural gift, and I introduced it to my later to be grandmother as c'est dinde, trying to say it's turkey, but what she heard was c'est d'Inde. Since I didn't have an article, she understood that it was from India. She was like, that's strange. Why did you bring me something from India when you're coming from the United States? And I had to be corrected and indicated that what I meant to say is c'est de la dinde. De la dinde. Yeah, so articles, very important. Don't forget them. They encode the number and the gender. Whether something is singular or plural, masculine or feminine, is often encoded in the article. So learn the article learn the gender when you are learning the word. That is all.